Last night, on a hill outside Kyoto, 70 samurai attacked one man. The man won. You slept through the entire battle in a ditch at the bottom of that hill because you hadn't eaten in 3 days, and a ditch out of the wind is a 5-star ditch. So when the sun came up, you found 70 sets of samurai armor that nobody was using anymore. You took the nicest one. You were going to sell it. That armor made you the most feared samurai in Japan, and it put the deadliest man alive on the road to your door. The year was 1604. You were a farmhand with no farm. Crops failed twice. The landlord took the third harvest, and you walked to Kyoto because starving in a city felt more dignified than starving in a field. It wasn't. The dead men were the Yoshioka, the most famous sword school in Kyoto. The one man who ended all 70 was a wandering ronin named Miyamoto Musashi. You knew none of this. You just knew armor sells. The helmet was too big. It wobbled. Chest plate smelled like its previous owner. And the 2 swords. One long, one short. You tied them to your belt upside down, fixed them, and still wore them at the wrong angle. Here's the fact you didn't know. In 1604, only samurai were allowed to wear 2 swords together. A peasant caught carrying them could be executed on the spot, legally, no trial. You weren't committing a small crime on that hill. You were committing the biggest one available. Plan, walk into town, sell everything, eat for a month. Plan lasted 40 minutes. Guards at the town gate saw you coming, mud-stained, battle-scented, 2 swords. Walking in from the direction of the massacre, the whole town had heard about it dawn. You froze, certain they were about to arrest you. They bowed. Terror, it turns out, looks exactly like stoic gravitas if you're wearing enough armor. By the time you reached the market, the rumor had outrun you, a survivor of the massacre. The inn refused your money. The restaurant sent out grilled fish, then sake, then more sake. A silk merchant pressed cloth into your hands for your honor and backed away, bowing. You said nothing the entire time. You were afraid your farm accent would give you away. And that's when you discovered rule number 1, the rule your whole new life would run on. The less you said, the more they respected you. One old samurai finally asked which school you trained under. You panicked and mumbled the name of your home village. He went quiet. Then he nodded gravely. I have not heard of it. It must be very old. This was the week to run. You didn't, because the food was free. Samurai began traveling to that town just to meet you. They came to hear how you survived the demon of Kyoto, and you gave them fragments. The blade was fast, because fragments were all you had. It didn't matter. They filled in the rest themselves. In one version, you traded 3 cuts with Musashi himself and walked away whistling. You just nodded at whichever version sounded best. Then a letter arrived carrying a seal you didn't recognize, and the man who brought it wouldn't stop kneeling. The shogun had heard of you. You were summoned. Here's the thing about a summons from the shogun. You can't decline. Running is a confession. So you went to meet the most powerful man in Japan, wearing a dead man's clothes. You knelt in the wrong spot. You bowed too deep and held it too long. The courtiers winced. Shogun decided this was the bluntness of a battlefield man with no patience for court manners. He liked it. Then he asked about the battle you slept through. So you said the emptiest sentence you could build. I did not defeat him. I merely chose not to die. Silence. Somewhere in the back, a scribe started writing. By evening, the entire court agreed it was the most samurai sentence ever spoken. He granted you a post, minor retainer, stipend paid in rice. Your plan was to keep your head down for a month, then quietly vanish. But one old retainer at the back of the hall had watched you grip your sword, like a man holding a garden hoe, and squinted. Remember him. For a year, the court gave you small jobs. Every single one went wrong in the correct direction. Guard duty, you spent your shifts hiding from every suspicious noise, so nothing ever happened near you. Your record read, unshakable vigilance. Promoted. Letters, they had you deliver official messages. You can't read, so you made every recipient read their letter out loud to prove their loyalty. One day, a magistrate read his own letter aloud, went pale in the middle, and confessed to skimming tax rice on the spot. You had accidentally invented an interrogation technique. Promoted. Then a drunk samurai insulted you in the street, baiting you to flinch. One wrong move gave him the legal right to cut you down where you stood. Everyone waited for you to draw. You stood in petrified silence for 10 full seconds because your legs had stopped taking orders. He broke first. He apologized. Witnesses swore you defeated him without unsheathing. So in spring, when a border province rebelled and the court needed a commander, nobody debated long. Who better than the man who survived Musashi and wins without drawing? Which is how you ended up on a horse you could not ride, in front of 800 soldiers, holding a war fan upside down. General, how does a fraud win a war? Every real general in Japan would spend years asking the same question. Battle 1. You saw the enemy line and your body made an executive decision, run. You ordered a full retreat. Your veterans knew that no sane commander retreats across open ground, so they assumed it was the feigned retreat, the oldest trick in warfare, and pulled back in perfect order. The enemy broke ranks to chase. Your army wheeled around and folded them in half. Your officers wept at the audacity. You also wept. Battle 2. You can't read maps either. You pointed at the wrong valley and marched 800 men away from the battlefield, through a pass so useless nobody had bothered defending it in 100 years. At dawn, you walked out of the mist directly behind the enemy camp. They surrendered before breakfast. By Battle 3, your officers had stopped asking how. As for the next day's plan, you stalled with the most mystical sentence you could produce: the river will decide. They spent the whole night interpreting it. First light, they attacked across the shallow ford while the enemy was still stringing bows. It worked. From then on, they brought you every decision, and you had to be cryptic on demand, forever. After the last battle, you walked the field alone. Your side won again. Some of your men didn't get up. They fell following orders you gave to save your own skin. You went behind the command tent and threw up. Your officers saw. They decided you were grieving for the enemy's fallen too. Respect increased. Even your guilt got misread. You came home undefeated. The Corps had a name for your tactics now, the Formless School. That's when the second-deadliest swordsman in Japan came looking for you. Sasaki Kojiro, undefeated. His sword was so long, men nicknamed it the laundry drying pole. His signature technique, the swallow cut, was a slash so fast it reversed midair and no opponent had ever walked away from it. Kojiro's obsession was Musashi, and the whole country was now telling stories about a general who had faced Musashi and lived. He rode to the capital and issued a formal public challenge. Refusing meant disgrace, and for a samurai, disgrace had one exit. So the duel was set, a riverbank, at noon, in front of hundreds. You arrived late, not as psychological warfare. You got lost, and then you threw up twice. But Kojiro had been standing in the sun for an hour, and by the time you stumbled down the bank, he was shaking with rage. Years later, in the most famous duel in Japanese history, Musashi would arrive late on purpose to enrage this exact man, and historians would call it genius. You did it first, by vomiting. He drew the long sword. You took one step forward. Inside its reach, the single place that sword can't hurt you, not strategy. Your legs tried to flee and picked the wrong direction. The swallow cut came down. You flinched, tripped over your own scabbard, and fell. The reverse cut passed through the air where your head had just been. His momentum carried him over you, and your panicked, flailing scramble drove the butt of your sword handle straight up into his jaw. He dropped like a wet robe. 300 people had just watched a man bait the swallow cut, step inside the longest sword in Japan, and end an undefeated duelist with a single rising strike, without ever unsheathing. You were still on the ground, patting your chest, checking whether you were dead. Kojiro awoke. He said nothing. He picked up his long sword, looked at you for a long moment, and walked away. He never spoke about the duel again. He didn't need to. 300 witnesses spoke for him. In every inn, every market, every castle town between the capital and the coast, every retelling got bigger. Life became free. Free rooms, free sake, students at your gate begging to join the Formless School. Taught them what you actually knew: hesitation, long silences, and never volunteering for anything. It genuinely kept some of them alive. The old retainer, the one who squinted, never once repeated the legends. He'd watched you hold a sword like a garden hoe for years. He knew. He also knew the lie was now worth more than the truth, so he poured your sake and said nothing. Far away, in a mountain inn, a filthy ronin ate rice alone in the corner. 2 swords, undefeated in 60 duels. At the next table, travelers were retelling your duel. The general who dropped Sasaki Kojiro in one motion, without drawing. The ronin stopped chewing. He asked one question. What was his name? 70 samurai fell on that hill because Miyamoto Musashi wanted a reputation. You stole yours out of a ditch. Now he's coming to take it back.